So, Dr. Betsy Greenleaf, and I'm here with another episode of Body, Mind, Spirit. This week, we're going to be talking with Dr. Sharon Stills about all things menopause. So, once again, Dr. Sharon Stills, thank you for being with us today.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me, Dr. Betsy.
So, you have a great presence on social media. You have some really informative posts, especially on Instagram. So, if people aren't following her, you need to follow her. And with everything's like this red hot, sexy menopause, how did this become your specialty?
Oh gosh, that's a big answer to a big question. So I'll try and keep it brief. I never went to medical school to work with women's health. I went to be a pediatrician. And when I opened up my clinic, a woman came in with Suzanne Summers' book, The Sexy Years. And my first instinct was, isn't that Chrissy from Three's Company? I remember watching her. What does she know about medicine? But I had an open mind and I said, let me take a look. And I read it and I thought, holy wow, she knows a lot about medicine. And I, as a doctor, can even put sprinkles and icing on that cake and really make it fantastic. And so I helped this woman with bioidentical hormones, and it changed her life. It changed her husband's life. It changed her family's life. And she just started telling everyone she knew. And before I knew it, I was only in my early 30s at this point. I was early in my practice, but I was this menopausal queen helping all these women have a totally different experience of menopause. And I had my own suffering with hormone issues. I had horrible PMS. I used to bloat so bad, people would ask me when the baby was due, which was really embarrassing and really just horrible experience. And so I thought, wow, I'm helping all of them. I should help myself too. And so I started working on balancing my hormones and using bioidenticals. And before I knew it, I went through menopause. I was a little on the earlier side. I was 48, and I never even had a hot flash. And that was because I balanced everything. So perimenopause for me was the best part of my life. And menopause is even better. And I feel so healthy and so good now in menopause, better than I did when I was 20. And so I am really passionate about flipping the script for women and helping them also know that I call it the second sacred act of their life. And so this is a time to be excited for, a time where you can really feel your best, not a time where you're getting fat, old, dry, itchy, all of these horrible things that we think about. We've been taught in our society that as you age, it's normal to not feel good. It's normal to gain weight. It's normal to have pain. And I am totally here to tell you that that is not normal. It's normal to age gracefully and feel better and better every day.
I think that's so important because, especially in the American culture, in menopause, first of all, I don't understand the word menopause because nothing's being paused. Like we're going into a different area, a different phase of our lives. That's why I like the Chinese, their word means second spring, the word that they use for menopause. But that's the thing, is a lot of women just think that this is like an end and that life is over and this is done. But we're living longer and longer. We spend more time now in our menopausal years than we do in childhood and then in our reproductive years. So I love that you're so supportive and changing that view of menopause. I would, what are the things that people complain the most to you about with their symptoms of menopause? Like, what are their biggest complaints?
And before I answer that, I just want to go back to what you said about pause, because I have taken the word pause and created a whole pause method for women around it. And I really think it is such an important time to pause, to take this time to say, okay, I'm going into a different stage of my life. Maybe your kids, if you had kids, are off to college or getting older. Maybe you're changing your career. Maybe you're changing your relationship. And so what a beautiful time to mark and pause and really evaluate your life. I'm such a big believer in we have to constantly be introspective and looking at our life and what's important to us and what are we doing about it. Because so often we think, oh, I love to dance. Dancing is my best medicine. And then if you took an inventory and you're like, oh, well, I went dancing in 1995. And so it's things like that, that when we stop and look, and it has to be us, it's not going to be your friend, your best friend, it's got to be you. And then we can say, you know what, I love to dance. I'm going to make it my business to look up dance classes or to put on music every day. And I'm going to shake my booty. And so it's a great time to pause and really think about it. And just like you said, we are living long in this time. And that's why I call it the second third act, because I don't believe it's the last act. I believe it's the middle act. I believe there's going to be a later act when we're in our hundreds, and then maybe we're just chilling on the porch. So I love that you said that. And I love the Chinese word. And I do believe that we don't revere the elderly as much as we should in our culture. And I don't like to use the word should, but as we could in our culture, and that there's so much wisdom we can extract. And I don't know about you, but I know for me, I always feel this embodiment of, oh, wow, it really is true. You do get wiser as you get older. I couldn't have realized this or felt this when I was 30. It just, there's something about having the wisdom and having the experience and growing older. And it's actually a very beautiful process. So I just want to.
No, I agree. And, you know, and I think this is just great to go with, because I know, like, I remember I just turned 50, and I remember thinking like, oh God, 50 was old. Like, this is like in my 20s. I'm thinking 50 was old. I think life is just getting better and better, because I think it's the attitude that you bring to it. Mm-hmm. So it's just so important to really, you know, not look at age as a number, and like, look at how many women that we see examples of that are vital and are just kind of rocking it in 50s and older now. It's so amazing.
I remember thinking that 40 was old when I was about 20. And of course, as you grow, I'm 53. So as you grow older, like 50s aren't old at all. And I'm loving this. There was someone I was talking to the other day, and she was like in her 40s. And I was like, just wait till you get to your 50s. It's even better. Not that I'm trying to rush you through your life, but 50s are just so, you really come into yourself and you feel good about yourself. And if you take care of yourself and you do all the things to keep yourself healthy, you have this newfound freedom. It's really a beautiful experience.
You know, I'm going to ask another question then. What do you think that we as women need to be doing in those perimenopausal and perimenopausal years to become more vital?
And that'll go to, so I do want to answer your first question. It won't take long. Real briefly, what do women complain about? So one of the first things is we all just have associated in our minds menopause hot flashes. And so that is definitely something that women think about, but I want to remind you that urinary incontinence, depression, anxiety, big thing I hear is not feeling like myself. Just don't feel like myself. Stress, hair loss, sleepless nights, weight gain. There are so many symptoms that alert us to the fact that our body's hormones are changing. And so it's a big misconception. So many women who are in perimenopause, which is that period of time before menopause. So the official medical definition, you haven't had your period for a year and now you're through menopause or menopausal. But there could be 5, 10, even 15 years leading up to that where your hormones are kind of wonky, you're on a roller coaster ride and you're not feeling good. And so don't let your typical doctor tell you, oh, that's normal. Oh, that's aging. Oh, you just need an antidepressant. No, find someone like myself, like Betsy, who understands the whole gestalt and will look through things with you, look at your hormones in a deeper way. And you asked, what do you need to do to stay vital? So look at your hydration levels, look at your gut health, because our gut is the seat of illness and wellness. And so our hormones are metabolized through the bacteria in our gut. It's important that our gut bacteria is balanced. You have to look at toxicity levels, because it's not a question of, are you toxic? Unfortunately, in this day and age, we are all toxic. We are all bombarded with so many toxins, visible and invisible. Wi-Fi, electromagnetic frequencies is a huge toxic exposure. That think about our cell phones and our laptops and the 5G radio towers. And so we have to be thinking about things we can't see. We have to be thinking about our thoughts. Negative thoughts are so toxic. They turn your terrain, your body acidic. We need to be thinking about our lymphatic flow. We need to be thinking about our oral health. Do you have root canals that shouldn't be there, or metals in your mouth that shouldn't be there? We need to be thinking about diets, our foods, our fuel, and not only what we're eating, but how we're eating and why we're eating and when we're eating and where we're eating. So many times we're eating in our car or standing at the counter, and we really need to make mealtime a time of nurturing ourselves. We need to start putting our health and our wellness at the forefront, not as an afterthought after we've gone through the whole day and ran ourselves ragged. And of course, we need to sleep. I'm a fan of sleep. So those are just a few things that we need to be thinking of. Vitality and health is so multifactorial. And what I find with the women I work with, and when I do a big program with them, we do a big 2-hour intake, and we're really looking at all the areas of your life, because maybe you are on it with your diet. Maybe you eat a really healthy diet and you eat sitting down and you chew your food and you eat organic and all those things, but maybe you're not sleeping, or maybe your relationships are troubled and you're not really satisfied, or maybe you don't know how to handle stress. And stress is something we all have. I always say, if you're alive, you're going to have stress. If you want to get rid of stress, that's when you die. So it's not a stress, it's our relationship. How do we dance with stress? How do we respond rather than knee-jerk react? It's really placing ourselves and our lifestyle at the forefront. And of course, I love bioidentical hormones. I think that they are just the best thing since sliced gluten-free bread. So I think that having your hormones balanced, making sure your liver is detoxing, these are really important game changers, and not just to get rid of hot flashes, but to prevent Alzheimer's and have good brain health, to strengthen bones, to help your cardiovascular system, to support your immune system. There's such a deep realm of benefits rather than just, I want to get rid of my hot flashes.
That's such a big topic, and the word hormones for a lot of people scares them, because I think the medical community did a disservice to women with the Women's Health Initiative study, which, for people who don't know, this was the study that happened in the late 1990s, early 2000s, that came to a halt because they found that women on the hormones, it was combined hormones, were having higher risk of breast cancer and heart disease. But I always like to point out to patients that study was a poorly designed study, and it was on the synthetic hormones, which we know are inflammatory. So what we're going to do is, when we come back from the break, we are going to talk about what exactly is the issue with bioidenticals and why we should not be scared of the word hormones.
80% of women will develop a pelvic health condition at some point in their lives. There is relief. There is hope. The Pelvic Floor Store, your resource for personal health.
And we're back with Dr. Sharon Stills. So yes, I'm so excited. I'm like getting so excited that I'm getting tongue-tied, because I can't wait for you to talk about hormones. Why should we not be scared of hormones?
Oh, that's a great question. I'm glad you brought up the Women's Health Initiative, because it was a really poorly designed study, and it did kind of really ruin it for women who can benefit. And yes, I always say it's apples and oranges. The studies that we see in the news or online, these are all with synthetic hormones, and that is apples and oranges to bioidentical hormones. Bioidentical hormones are specifically compounded from natural substances, and they are just what they're called. They're bioidentical. They're identical to what your body produces, not a foreign molecule that your body doesn't recognize. And it's interesting, even in that Women's Health Initiative study, like you were saying, it was combined. So it was Premarin and progestins, and these are all synthetics. But the women who just took even the synthetic estrogens, which I believe have no place in our bodies, but even those women, they reduction in breast cancer. And you don't really hear about that often, but we do have this real misconception that hormone estrogen, and I'm here to tell you that is not true. If that were true, when we were going through puberty and we were surging hormones, or when women are pregnant and surging hormones, we'd see a lot of breast cancer develop, and we don't. It's when women's hormones are going out of balance. And so, yes, there are estrogens that are more proliferative and can cause cancerous growth, but these estrogens are not opposed. They're not balanced with your progesterone and your testosterone. They're not being metabolized properly. And there are actually estrogens that, yes, I use to treat breast cancer. And these are specific estrogens that are actually anti-proliferative. They actually help protect against breast cancer. And so it's a very common misconception, and it's one of my missions to make that go away, that women are empowered. And of course, it doesn't mean you just run out and start taking hormones. You need to be with a physician who understands this, who understands how to monitor you, who understands how to administer these hormones to you. And a lot of times that means going outside of your traditional OBGYN or your primary care doctor, because they're just not trained to think that way. And so you have to find someone who is. And when you get your hormones balanced, women always describe it, it's a light switch. It's like, oh, everything just turned on, and you feel like yourself, and you feel vibrant, and you're sleeping, and your weight is normalizing, and your hair and your skin look healthy. And so there's no reason. I often see there's people who say in the holistic field, oh, I'm going to help you through menopause and we're not going to use hormones. Like there's some kind of important thing to that. And I just think that's crazy. And I can tell you, so many of those patients end up in my office, and they may not be having hot flashes, but they are not living vitally. They are not being protected, and they are not feeling their best. And when we get them on the bioidentical hormones, they are so happy. They're so grateful. And they're like, I wish I saw you 5 years ago. And so there's nothing wrong with having properly dosed. I'm not saying we don't want to bring you to your hormone levels of when you were 18. That's not necessary. But sub-physiological levels that are going to give you ease and health and grace and feeling great, bring it on. That's what I say.
You know what? I'm so annoyed because when I was 41, I had a hysterectomy and had everything taken out. And I was still in the mindset at that point in time to be like, oh, hormones are bad. Hormones are bad. And I purposely did not go on hormones. And now there was a study that showed that if you don't get on hormones within 3 years of going through menopause, whether that's surgical menopause or natural menopause, that you lose some of the protective mechanisms of estrogen on brain. And I'm like, I didn't go on hormones until much later, because I finally got to the point where I was like, I can't take it anymore. And then I actually learned, and I found out better, than what I had been taught. But it really is so important for vitality.
Yeah. And I think even with that, it's still never too late. You're always going to get some benefit. I've had women, and it breaks my heart. I once had an 85-year-old come into my office, and she had just been suffering for years, and everyone is different. And so some of you listening may have horrible hot flashes and they're going on for 10 years after menopause. Some of you may have suffered and then it slows down, but we don't want to just go on our symptoms. I always think of symptoms. Typically we think symptoms are, who wants to deal with symptoms? And we just are taught in our society to take a pill and get rid of them. But to me, I think of symptoms as these sacred messengers that are speaking to you, saying, hello, something's out of balance. I need you to pay attention to me. And so we need to listen to our symptoms. They guide us to where the imbalances are. But even if you have gone through symptoms, if they've gone away, you still want to be looking at your levels, because you still want to be protecting against Alzheimer's and all of these other things we discussed already. And so there's no harm in doing a trial of some bioidentical hormones properly administered and deciding for yourself. And I can tell you, and I've been doing this for over 20 years now, and I've had a couple of women through the years say, I want to just stop. And they always come back. A couple of months, 6 months tops, they're like, oh my God, Dr. Stills, what was I thinking? I just don't feel good. I don't feel like myself. Please give me my hormones back.
I was going to ask you, what is your opinion on feeling sexier in menopause?
Well, one, I personally think it's really nice to be able to have sex and not worry about getting pregnant. So that kind of takes some of the stress away when you're being intimate. But I think sexy, and my read that you talked about is all about reinventing your health, exploring your spirit, and discovering your sexy, because I truly believe we have these physical bodies. We've been gifted with these physical bodies, and we need to make sure they're balanced. We need to make sure our nutrition is up and our hydration is up and we're moving our bodies and we're sleeping our bodies and all of these things. And once you do that, that doesn't always necessarily mean you're going to be healthy, because there's this whole spiritual, emotional, psychosocial part. And so then we really have to explore. So was I depressed because I had low thyroid or low iron or low B12? Or am I depressed because I'm not relating the way I'd like to be relating, or I'm in a job I hate, or I have trauma I'm dealing with? So then we do need to go in and handle all of these emotional, which is why we're here. We're here to heal and grow and learn our lessons. At least that's what I believe. And so then we do that. And when we have all that handled, and this is not a like DIY, you're going to do this over the weekend. This is years. Your life is a project. And so this can take years, months. So you don't push the process, you just are working on yourself. But as we do this, what emerges is our feeling of sexy. And again, we think sexy is big boobs and a skinny body or a curvy body, whatever we've been programmed to believe. But I'm all about discovering what sexy means to you, because sexy is not just how you look, it's how you feel, it's the energy you radiate, it's how you move and speak and think, it's how you participate in the world. Think about if you ever went on a date with someone and they weren't really physically that attractive to you, but then as you got to know them, they had this beautiful personality and they laughed and they were gracious and they were kind to people and strangers. And all of a sudden they got a heck of a lot sexier, right? Because their being, what they're exuding is what sexy is about. And it's a different experience for everyone. As everything, health is an individual experience. It always is.
I love that explanation. That really hits home. That is amazing. What kind of things, as women are preparing for menopause or have gone through menopause, what are things do you think is important for them to be doing?
Well, I think it's important to have a team. And so even if you're not experiencing symptoms right now and you have a period every month and you're regular and you don't have bad PMS and you're not bleeding too heavy, I still think it's important to find someone who's going to guide you through. So you're not in this crisis of all of a sudden, because it's different for women. It's different for everyone. Some women get a period every month and then all of a sudden it stops and that's it. Some women, it becomes a little chaotic and they start bleeding and they start cramping and they have a lot of symptoms, and you don't want to be in that position where then you're like, oh my God, what do I do? So I think it's good to start building a team and start understanding that hormone balance is simple, but it's complex, and you want to have the right guide helping you. I think it's important that you get some baseline levels. And I love to do 24-hour urine testing. I love to see what the metabolites are, how your body is processing. I want to make sure your liver is working optimally. I want to make sure you know how to detox. I want to make sure your lymphatics are flowing. So there's all these things you can be doing to work on your health, because these are all going to have an impact on your hormones.
Now, this is something I've never brought up before, but what if you're a partner of somebody that's going through menopause? How can you, as a partner, support your perimenopausal, menopausal partner?
Well, the first thing is don't say, I think your hormones are making you crazy. Even if that might be the case, because I have a saying, balanced hormones equals sanity, because if you're having emotional issues, typically there's always a hormone involvement there. But just to kind of talk to them and say, get them to someone who can help them and get them thinking about their health and get them to breathe and slow down and take a moment and really evaluate what's going on in their life, because our physical bodies are often a reflection of what our thoughts are. Our thoughts really create our reality. And so I see it a lot, I'm sure you do. I just had a patient the other day who this was actually a man, he's finally ready to get on board because he's a year away from when his father died. And so he has this belief that he's going to die too. Or if we saw our mother suffer and have a hysterectomy, we think that's going to happen to us as well. And so it's really a good time to help your partner say, hey, you are the author. You get to write your story. And this may have happened. You may have this family history, but genetics loads the gun and epigenetics pulls the trigger, and how we choose to live our lives and what we choose to do really makes a difference. So like personally, I have a very strong history of cardiovascular disease and diabetes in my family. And I don't worry about that because I know I live very differently. I eat very differently. I exercise very differently. I sleep very differently. I communicate very differently. So I don't worry about that. I know that I'm in control to a degree of how I'm going to age and how my health is going to be. And so for a partner, it's just really good to be supportive and maybe to help illuminate things that your partner may not be seeing, but to do it in a very compassionate, loving, kind way, not to be, I can't believe you're like this, and I can't believe you don't want to have sex anymore, because whenever you come at someone from that, it just puts their defenses up. So I notice, honey, you're not as interested in the bedroom anymore, or I notice that you're crying a lot. What can we do? What can we look at? Maybe we need to go see someone. And so coming to them as a team, you're a team. And when someone's not doing well, we teamwork it together.
I love that. Those are some great answers. So where are you located and where can people find out more information about you?
So I spend most of my time in sunny Scottsdale, Arizona, but I'm everywhere. I was a pioneer in telemedicine way before the pandemic. I've been doing telemedicine for over 10 years now. I'm originally from New York, but I'm in Arizona because I'm not a big fan of winters. And I am Dr. Sharon Stills on all social media. I host a podcast for a nonprofit that I'm involved with, which is called The Science of Self-Healing. We talk about a wide variety of things on there. And as you mentioned, I love to be on Instagram and Facebook and just helping women know that there's other options, there's other ways to experience this time of life.
Yeah, the information that you put out, make sure people that you follow Dr. Sharon Stills, because the information she puts out on her social media is amazing. I look at it every day. I really do.
I have an Insta crush on you. I think you make the best video. Like, I want to be Dr. Betsy when I grow up.
It's so much fun. So I want to thank you for being with us. One of the things I want to ask you, our theme this season is trying. What do you want to try to do for other people, and what do you want them to try to do for themselves?
I am on a mission to make sure women know they have options, because I believe that the kind of medicine I practice, that the kind of medicine you practice is not always known by everyone. And I want to make sure they know it's an option. I'm not here to force anyone to do anything, but I think it's really important we know what our options are so we can empower ourselves to make the choices that work the best for us. So I would say I am really passionate about just spreading the word and letting women know that there's hope, there's options, and that this can really be the second sacred act of your life. I live it every day, and I want you to live it too. When I went through menopause, I climbed Kilimanjaro. It was really important to me to mark this passage. And I'm not, if you're like, she told me to go climb Kilimanjaro, I'm not saying you have to go climb Kilimanjaro, but figure out what your Kilimanjaro is, and make that a reality in your life, so that when these things happen, you mark them, you have something to anchor in to say, I'm rocking it. Nothing is going to stop me. I can rock any phase of my life.
Oh my goodness. Thank you so much, Dr. Sharon, for being with us. And I just like to remind everybody that if you've enjoyed today's programming, make sure you go to WYTV7.org, check out our other programs, and don't forget to press that donate button, because every little dollar helps with our programming, and also helps with the number of community events and programs that we're involved with. So make sure you do that, and tune in again next week for another episode of Body, Mind, Spirit. And don't forget to follow me and Dr. Stills on all social media. Once again, Dr. Sharon, thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye, everyone.